Now, first of all, congratulations on this new album. Rewind the film. Is it what you really wanted?
Yes, it is, yeah. I think the nature of the actual English phrase, rewind the film, makes it sound as if it's nostalgic, but it's actually dealing with how the past has shaped you and how you are living in the present day, I suppose. And, because the actual album deals with a lot of mortality. It deals with, obviously, us still being in a rock and roll band when we're all 44 years old, kind of thing. And it deals with losing some people that, that we grew up with, that were very influential to us and we loved and respected. And, and as you get older, everything changes around you. And you try to make sense of the present through the prism of the past. And somehow it can be confusing, it can hurt you. But I think it's an important part of being in a band once you start past a certain age, because you've got to examine yourself, or you've got to re-examine yourself, and you can only know how you fit into the present and the future by examining the past, I think. And that's what the whole nature of the record is, just being older and dealing with the ridiculousness of still being a rock and roll band.
Have you managed to deal with it? Because, I think the last couple of albums was kind of dealing with the past.
No, I think that was longing for the past. I mean, if Postcards from a Young Man was definitely nostalgic in the sense of we were perhaps trying to recreate a bit of the past in the present, or we were trying to live in the past, whereas this record definitely does not live in the past. It really just tries to let it really just tries to let us inform us of our present situation, whether it be politically, culturally, or personally. We use the past as just a reference point, but it's not trying to bring it back, which I think Postcards from a Young Man definitely was nostalgic for the past. This one just tries to make sense of the present through it, I think.
How did the collaboration with Richard Hawley come together?
The song Rewind the Film is based on a David Axelrod sample, which we replayed note for note, because we couldn't afford to use the sample kind of thing. But Nicky had written a lyric to this David Axelrod sample, and then we had to create another half of the song. We had to write the other half of the song ourselves musically. And Nick had sung on the demo, and it was great. It was brilliant. But I just had this sneaking feeling that I didn't want him to have to sing that song every night, because it's a very, very it's a tough emotional journey, shall we say. And I wanted on this record, I did want other people in the band, because we've been around for a lot. This is our 11th studio album, and I just had this sneaking feeling that other people could actually voice, the real emotion or the truth or the vision of the song better than we could, because we've been doing it for so long, and there's a finite amount of possibilities in your musical armoury.
My singing wasn't that good. Mr. Hawley has made it a million times better, so it wasn't just that I didn't want it emotionally, but it was a really good call from James, because it gave it that kind of Scott Walker cinematic, and I think his voice works really well with James as well. It must be because they bonded through alcohol that it worked so well on record, I think.
That's quite a great title for a song, Bonded Through
Alcohol. Yeah.
Like that.
If Richey was still in the band, it'd definitely be a good title. But I had Richard Hawley's number in my phone, because we'd connected in the past when we'd met at a couple of gigs and stuff, and so it was a very personal thing of me calling him, and he just said, send me the song, Chuck, kind of thing, and I did, and he agreed to do it straight away.
Well, there's quite a few sad songs on the album, like Running Out of Fantasies and kind of a bit disillusioned. What was wrong, Nicky?
It just examines really the delusion of trying to sustain that dream when you're in a rock and roll band, really, and you're in your 40s, and we all got kids and all got responsibility, and the album lyrically is about loss of human life and loss of your own ideals and principles, and trying to navigate yourself through with some kind of dignity, even though really deep inside you just want to be 22 and hate everything. I think that revolution really is for the young, and I think that's the trouble that we face as we've grown up all together.
Why?
Because I think you have less knowledge when you're young. You're less frightened, and you're more forceful, you're more bulletproof, It's really hard to do that when you're taking your kids to school every morning. You know, it's hard to dress up as a woman and slag everything off when the next day you've got to take your children to school.
Do you still do that on stage then?
I'd like to. I do in my head, but you know, I think it might just seem a little bit contrived if we behaved that way. Even though I want to, I'm not quite sure. That's what the album's about in a lot of ways. It's just how do you kind of fit in, really?
Why not just not care? I mean, look at Mick Jagger. He's over 70 and he's just not...
Mick's amazing.
I think kind of it's a difference between actually talking about the things that pure nihilism, you know, the things that kind of that feed young rock and roll is purely nihilistic. It's quite destructive in its nature when rock and roll is at that kind of nihilistic kind of like, you know, forefront at its best. That's what I want to say, but you said it from me. And you know, the bare bones of the fact is, you know, you write a song like Faster or You Love Us when you're young, and then you do start changing. You start writing songs like If You Tolerate This, Your Children Will Be Next.
Which is
you know,
a brilliant song, by the way.
Yeah, but it's much more constructive in its mindset than Faster or kind of You Love Us, which is just pure narcissism. You know, and Faster is just an utter challenge, an affront to everything. Whereas If You Tolerate This tries to make sense of the world. And I think, you know, once you do get past 30, you want to make sense of things and you want to guard your own life, your own world at the same time. Whereas you want to destroy it and shape it in your own vision when you're young.
Do you think you've achieved something musically? I mean, you've been around for like over 20 years now. Do you think you've done something for the young to look up to?
I think we've shown that you can be on your own, really, that you don't have to be part of a movement. You don't really have to tag yourself onto. You can exist in a self-made world. I think if we've achieved anything, it's that, really, that you can sustain yourself if you're really close and you really engage with the world and you still love to read, you love to watch and you love to listen. You know, as long as you've got those sensibilities like we have, the obsession with culture, I guess, in its broadest form.
I love that because it kind of reflects in your songs as well. I mean, Show Me the Wonder, lyrically a very thoughtful song.
Yeah, it is.
And the melody is just like Tony Christie, Take Me Home to Amarillo.
The second person who said that, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And the other person who said it, we really trust, so it must be true.
The other person that said it was the guy that signed us, who is the boss of America now.
Yeah.
Who we completely trust, so
You're in good
99% of the time.
I was listening.
So you should be running Sony in America, because that's what you said too.
But lyrically, it's a celebration of doubt, really. The idea that these two opposing forces, science and religion, are always trying to prove everything.
Amazing.
They're always trying to prove their way. And really, some things are just unexplainable. Some things just fucking happen. You can't prove why football's the most popular game in the world. You can't prove why Black Sabbath are four blokes from a shithole in Britain made the most amazing music ever. Some things are just alchemy. You just cannot prove certain bits of life. But it's just that amazing thing that comes out of it. And there's so many examples that sometimes let's just live in mystery. Mystery can be a good thing sometimes. I don't want to prove, I don't know why Keith Richards had the best haircut in the world. He never had his haircut. Yeah, he used to, and he cut it himself. He never went to a hairdresser's ever.
Wow.
It's just mystery.
Four Lonely Roads, who's the collaborator there?
Well, I sang that originally, and again, I just don't like singing.
And again, I replaced his vocal with somebody else.
So mean, isn't he?
But we had Kate in mind anyway, because obviously, as a rule, we just love working with female singers. The songs I write musically tend to be slightly more feminine and fragile, and James finds it quite hard to sing them because they're, my range is just very limited. So Kate's got such a folky kind of pure voice.
Who's she?
She's just she's done a lot with Griff from the Super Furries. She's done a lot in her own right. Welsh singer-songwriter, kind of multi-talented, multi-instrumentalist. And she was in LA recording her record, and she just sent it back really quick. And it was so good, we just took all the other vocals off and kept hers on. It's probably the first ever record we've done where none of us are on. Singing-wise, is it?
Manavir as well, that was complete instrumental, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, it must be the least James has ever sung on one of our albums.
I'm looking forward to the tour. I really am. I can just get drunk every night and just play guitar at the back of the stage.
Bond with alcohol.
I bonded with alcohol, but I will reconvene with it.
Manic is just like a little castle in West Wales where Virginia Woolf is said to have written to the lighthouse. George Bernard Shaw, I think, visited and wrote there. It's a truly magical place because it's a castle which leads to the sea and a beach called Shrinkle Haven, the most amazing beach, rock pools and stuff.
This solemn Welsh heart, is that what you still are? The fighter inside?
Yeah, I think sullen it's kind of taken from Dylan Thomas. How sullen is thou art, is it? How sullen is thy art? And it's quite a nasty word, really, sullen. It's sort of melancholic, but also quite bitter. And this song's just about the two opposing forces, really. I think in the band, not just in me, it's the good heart and the black heart, the bad heart. Yeah, because there is extreme nihilism and hatred in us, uncontrollably as people, but there's also a really kind of moralistic good side, and they're just constantly at war. And sometimes I think the good wins, but mostly I think the bad wins.
But you don't hit each other during sessions?
I think basically having the studio allows us to get all the nastiness out without the outside world sort of hearing it. Whereas when we started the band, the outside world thrived on it, but now we sort of say it all to each other and then we come out cleansed.
Thank God.
Good people.
So what's going to happen on tour then? I mean, if there's no Nicky dressing up as a woman in leopard skin style, what are we going to expect? Like Manics playing chess on stage?
I don't think I'm not going to give truth to the lie that he's completely given up wearing skirts. So kind of like I think that might. The more confident Wire is feeling, the more garbed up he gets, I think. But it's kind of I think we just appreciate. We don't really worry about taking stuff on the road because we absolutely just love it now. Unfortunately, we have become institutionalized in terms of the shark process of if you stop moving, you die. And we fell in love with touring, from especially coming to places like Germany. We want to launch the next record year. It's what we want to do. And I think we're just such an organic self-feeding monster now. That just when we start moving, that's when things start happening.
Yeah, and, I think touring has become a vehicle for inspiration as well, because undoubtedly I write more lyrics over the last 4 or 5 years when I've travelled than I do in any other situation.
Well, you have to. You better have to, because you've written something about Tokyo and nothing about Germany. So
the next album has got a lot about Germany. A lot. I mean, it's got a bilingual track sung in German by a German actress on it.
When is it out? I've heard it's a faster record.
Yeah, it might be out in April. March, April, it might be earlier. We're not quite sure. We're just finishing mixing it now with Craig Sylvie in the next couple of weeks. So
what made you bring this one out and then the next one rather than bringing it out as a big double album?
Because this one was finished first, basically. I think we kind of tuned into this one. We started writing for this one a bit earlier than the next record. Then 6 months through the process, we realised there were 2 separate records happening at the same time. But this one was just all complete and finished and ready to go. So we're not the kind of people that leave something hanging around on the shelf anymore, because
you never know.
You invest so much in something that you just become exhausted by the end of it, and if you don't put it out, then you just fall out of love with it. So you've got to get it out there.
It's actually just... I was reading an interview with Josh Homme about the new Queens of the Stone Age album, which is brilliant. It's my favourite Queens album. And he just said, I looked at, he said, the Queens, we looked in the mirror, we got naked, and we made our most honest album. And I think, we looked in the mirror definitely on this album and just thought we have to try and... the biggest thing of all was just taking James's electric guitar away. He's obviously a massive part of our sound, and there's barely any of it on this album. So that's like getting rid of one of your trademarks. That was a big thing to do, and just that acoustic nature. We've always been on about Nebraska and Leonard Cohen, and we finally sort of achieved that kind of record. We're the longest surviving artist on Columbia, bar Bruce Springsteen.
We're one of the longest serving acts on Sony itself. Kind of like it's only in terms of British act, only Sade has been on Sony as long as we have.
Yeah. Well, James met Bruce the other day.
Yeah, I went to see a show in Cardiff, and it was
Was it good?
It was amazing, actually. I'm the big Bruce fan of the band, kind of thing. And to be honest, there are not many people of his stature that would actually just go out of his way to actually meet somebody like myself after a gig. You know, it's really nice, and somebody like him comes to your hometown in Cardiff, and he kind of Bruce Springsteen will meet you in his dressing room now. And and he kind of knows about us a bit and stuff. And our boss that signed us is now the boss in America, so that's the connection there. And I told him that I'd bust a couple of Bruce songs on the streets of Cardiff, and he was kind of impressed by it. And he just played a show for 3 hours 15 minutes.
That in itself.
So he's kind of you can. I'm a massive fan, obviously, but if you're not a massive fan, you can take that into consideration. He's kind of fought the good fight, and whenever you think he's kind of lost beneath the riches of his experience and work, something like that happens, and he actually goes out of his way to meet and talk with somebody after, just because it's their hometown, which is really it's a lot of humility, I think he shows when he does something like that.
Much like us, he still wants to communicate, and I think as long as we think we've got something to say and think that we can still communicate with people, that's what drives you on. The minute we're a band, we never consider ourselves artists. I think as a rule when people become artists, it kind of means they've given up wanting to communicate with people. They just want to communicate with themselves. But at the moment we still feel we want the rest of the world to know.
I mean, I go to Manics gigs and I see people in their 20s, so you haven't lost it at all.
Well, a dangerous thing has started happening. A lot of people that were into us, when we were young, when we were all younger, let's face it, they've started bringing their kids to the concerts, and they've started converting their kids
new generation
to kind of to us. And when I was slimmer, and it's kind of, sometimes I think, oh God, don't indoctrinate your kid with our kind of like silly bitter ways, but kind of like their kids seem to get off on it and they buy into it.
I think we certainly with around Send Away the Tigers we had a new intake big time of Manics fans. Their album got a lot of younger kids into us. Maybe it was just because Nina was with us, I don't know, but certainly added a glamorous side, and from that point on we just seemed to get a vampiric new intake of Manics fans.
And also this one's really easy for everyone to understand. Like, even if you're not a big fan of literature or whatever, you still understand what's going on.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
I think so, yeah.
I think we've given up trying to predict. I think there's a certain period where you could tell the way everything worked, but I think we're in the world of digital chaos. You just gotta hope you somehow connect with people.
When are you going to play Germany?
I think next, like I said, we're hoping to launch a second album here, so this album's really difficult, the acoustic run, because there's lots of brass, there's lots of tenderness, it's the quietest album we've ever done, so it's quite a struggle to actually rehearse at the moment, but we're just in a short tour of the UK. I think the major bulk of the touring will be done, next March and next April. The last European tour we did was so good. Gigs in Germany in particular were fantastic, so I'm sure we'll be back then.
So what about your solo careers then? Is there anything happening? Are you going to do stuff solo?
At the moment I don't feel like I want to. I think it's been nice kind of collaborating with other musicians like Richard Hawley, Kate LeBon, Lucy Rose, and some of the stuff from the next record we've collaborated too. So I think I'd like to go that way if I was going to do something outside the Manics. But I think Moya's got a kind of an album, a solo album gestating inside him at the moment, I think.
Tell me about it, sir.
I just wish I had the energy to get it. I don't know, I actually did it last time, really. I'm not the most talented musician, but...
Why do you say that? It's not true.
No, it's just the kind of willpower to put it all together, really. But, I'd like to release some kind of feedback-drenched, tuneless dirge.
He wants to do his version of Berlin, Lou Reed's Berlin, I think.
I think there's one ambition left.
With David Bowie.
Is to record an album in Tokyo. That's the one thing I'd like to do ideally as a band, but if we could just do one album, 3 weeks in Tokyo.
Why Tokyo? I mean, you've got the Tokyo
style. It's really expensive. to record it. It really is. It's just super expensive.
And is that the reason why I want to do it?
Yeah, good point.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.